Writing can be a very lonely endeavor, but it doesn't have to be. In this episode of Write, Publish, Repeat, we're talking with Joe Solari of Author Nation on the importance of networking as an author and how to find your community and why you'd want to. Stay tuned.
Write, publish, repeat. It echoes through the air. A chorus for creators, a call to those who dare. With cookies as his compass and a pen that won't retreat, he journeys through the pages. Write, publish, repeat.
Hello and welcome to Write, Publish, Repeat. Today we're talking to Joe Solari, the Managing Director of Author Nation, and we're going to be talking about building your author network. You know, why you need to know other people and don't shut yourself out like a hermit like I have for most of my life.
Dave, as a ratio, how much time do you spend in your basement all alone?
Oh, like 98% of the time. So I will allow Sean to introduce you more properly since he met you in person at Author Nation, an event he has not shut up about, by the way.
Yeah, Author Nation was great. Author Nation was a great event on a macro level, like just looking at it, like how great is this for the industry? I was very, very satisfied. And on a personal level, like it kicked me in the ass exactly the way I wanted to feel kicked in the ass, like revisiting fiction. So it was great. And I met Joe right away. Johnny and I flew out of Boston together, and we were standing in line to register, and Joe came up and was very, very gracious and kind of said, thank you for starting this all that long time ago. This is all here. And it was great. It was some of my best moments were with Joe. We went to dinner on the last night, and I got to know him better. And I just feel like this is a dude who has the Author Nation firmly in mind, and you know, both as a concept, as an actual business. And so when we were kind of plotting out our 9 episodes for this much-needed reboot, when we were talking about network, this just seemed right. Because this is the place. If you could only go to one event per year, this is the one I would say. Get out of your dungeon and go to the event and meet people. And so, yeah, I've got no skin in this game. In fact, there is an affiliate program for this. And Joe was like, dude, sign up for the affiliate program because you won't shut up about it. And I'm like, no, I'd actually rather not, because I want to be able to proudly declare with like no skin in the game, this is the place, because my skin in the game is actually bigger. My skin in the game is the industry. My skin in the game is my own success and the success of those around me and people I work with. And so Author Nation was I can't wait for this year.
And this year, November 3rd through 7th at in Las Vegas, Nevada, and they have this little up-and-coming author who's doing a keynote. You may have heard of him, James Patterson. I think I said it right.
Yeah. Old Jimmy's coming to the show. One of 2 events he'll be at. He's doing Thriller Fest out in New York, I think in May, maybe. And then he's coming to our event, and he'll be speaking on Thursday evening. It'll be an interview, kind of fireside chat. And then he'll be signing at our reader event. And I think what's going to be so interesting is similar to like when we had Kevin Smith come out. You know, these guys speak at a lot of events, but very few times do they come and realize like, holy cow, I'm with my tribe. Like, these are my people. And it gives them the freedom to talk in a different way. And because they see the heads bobbing in the audience, like, yes, that's right. And so I know Patterson is a great speaker. We've all seen him in all these different things and master classes, but he's never been in this environment where he's around a bunch of people that are maybe, if not as entrepreneurial as him, more entrepreneurial, if it's possible.
Right, he's easily the most entrepreneurial writer in the room.
Yeah.
There's like an army of them.
Yeah, now he's met the zombie horde of entrepreneurship, right? Like, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so I and it's not lost on me, like, this is kind of the podcast that was the podcast, right? Like, there's DNA that goes all the way back to here.
Yeah, it's been it was, I mean, honestly, the reason it got started last year and the reason we had kind of a shaky start is because we weren't really ready to come back. The thing that accelerated our kind of momentum here was Author Nation. Like, I wanted to have our first episode live before, I got on the plane, and Dave was like, "Do we have to?" I was like, "Yes. When we go, we go." And and it's because it felt like a homecoming. So yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, just thank you for caring about the community and being a great custodian.
Yeah, I think, and this gets to, Dave's your big concept here about community is, we're thinking about this like a system. Like, how do we build a self-organizing system that helps authors to figure out success, right? Too often things get gimmicky, or we're chasing trends, or we're trying to crack the algorithm, where it's like, well, no, it's more about like human connection. And the deeper we drive into the things that aren't human, right? The more that human touch is highlighted and worth more, right? And, for example, last year, one of the choices we made was to not be on Facebook and to build our community elsewhere. People were pretty upset with that. This year, it's kind of looking like a nice thing to have a community where you don't have to be on Facebook. It's like, I wish it wasn't so practical, but it's like, yeah, like we don't have other people telling us what the rules are, and the rules aren't changing on whims. So we have our community, and those are the kind of things that we're thinking about. Is like, it might be the longer road, it may be the harder road, it might take more time to explain to people why. But I think, too often we're looking to have the easier, softer way, right? And it's like, okay, well, yeah, you got this massive group of people that really aren't the right people, but it looks great. You can run around with a 6-figure number of followers, but they're not the right people.
Yeah, I actually really personally appreciate that. I hate being on Facebook. It's just not a place I ever want to go. And there's one group that I belong to, and that's where it is. It's on. They meet once a year in person, but other than that, it's on Facebook. So if I want to participate, I kind of have to be there. And I have this cycle where I'll fuck off of Facebook, and then I'll go to a live event, and I'm like, oh, these are my people, and I get back on Facebook, but only for there. And there were 2 groups like that, and one of them did what you guys did, and just they moved to an app scenario.
Yeah.
And they're like, and people did rebel because people are on Facebook, but slowly it's taken them some time, but they are converting people, and I love that you're long-term in your thinking there.
Yeah, so I mean, we do have a Facebook group there now. We've done that because we also listen to our community, and they're like, hey, I'm on too many things. This is where I'm going to be. And it's like, okay, we'll be there to make announcements and do stuff, but that's not where the core of our product is. That's not where the real meat is on this, in the sense of like, hey, we want you over in this place here where we have a community that's really just focused on the author community, and we have all our learning stuff there. So all the stuff we've been doing, I know you just got done with your Q&A session, where, we have, Dave, for you not being at the show, you have a session where you would go and sit and learn, and great, take your notes. But we have so many sessions, and we're multi-track, there's no way you can see everything. This is impossible. So if you were to make a decision like, hey, I'm going to pick the ones I really want to be at, but then there's these other, 30 things that I wanted to see that are relevant to me, you can watch those videos, which you can do at a lot of shows. There's a lot of things like virtual stuff like that. But what we did differently is we then have a follow-up live virtual Q&A where that you just can ask questions of the speaker, right? So like, even if you were at that session and watched it live, now you have a chance to have digested the information, really maybe applied it to your author business, and could ask more poignant questions in that group. but all of this
He
stuff
loved
is
the opportunity to have people watch him twice. Like he must have.
so like that's the kind of stuff we're doing, is trying to make it where we can have this is where we're creating, this is where we're building and having fun, and having it where like, oh, it's a different experience. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, so for somebody that, I mean, for me, writing was always like an independent thing until I met Sean. We started working together. So for people that are more, solo-minded writers and stuff, but I mean, they want, what are the reasons they should seek, a network or community of other authors? How does it help them?
Yeah. So, and this is stuff I've been personally writing about, and it's the idea of, again, systematizing your network, right? And if you think about yourself as an author, it's a solitary thing. That's great. You have to have this space where you can be creative, but you also need support, right? You need to have a small group of people around you that get what you're about, as weird as it is, right? And also can hold you accountable and mentor you. And so this gets to our opening session at the show. We looked at our community and said, across these different types of authors, and let's just say for this example, we have 2 authors that have written 7 years, and they both have written 10 books in those 7 years. We look in the data that we had gotten from our survey, we could see performance differences, and we could correlate those differences to 3 key factors. Do they have a peer group? Do they have accountability? Do they have a mentor? And if you have any one of those 3, you're going to be usually 2 times more profitable on average. If you have all 3, you're going to be 4.2 times more profitable, and you'll be profitable 18 months faster. So like that's something that like we can control, and gets back to your specific question, is like, okay, if you don't build these things into your business, right? So that community of peers, people that you trust, people that are going to hold your feet to the fire and make you, like, I know for myself, on my own, I can rationalize all kinds of doom scrolling and bullshit, and like, but when I know like, oh, I have to deliver this for Sean, like, I make sure I check my punctuation. I do, like, knowing that, like, lean into it, right? And then the third piece is the mentorship. And while that's a lot harder, especially when you think of how elite the community gets towards the top and how much time they have, but guess what? The show becomes that mentorship, because we can create this bounty of people to tap into, even if it's only for an hour, right? And then follow up with them. So the idea is, one, at a big level, understanding you can't do this on your own. Well, let me rephrase that. You can. It's harder. Mm-hmm. Go right ahead, right? But
it's harder, and it's also more like spiritually corrosive. We found in Sterling and Stone, the number one problem we're actually solving for our storytellers is loneliness. Like, I want to feel a part of something because I can go 3 times faster when I'm not lonely.
Yeah, and that makes total sense to me, right? Like, when you also understand how tough this career is, and you see that there are a lot of absurd people trying to do this, like, you just don't feel as crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's, so there's that part. But, so that's kind of your, like, building that inner circle is really important. And then there's the next layer, which the show really takes care of, and that is like, how do we build you the appropriate network for your business, right? And this is kind of the Stanley Milgram small world problem being solved, is like, if you can come into a place like Author Nation and connect with key vendors, key thought leaders in the industry, like, your network gets logarithmically bigger because you're now a node on their network, right? So now it's like, oh, like, how do, like, we can give you a real concrete example. It's like, who would be an awesome guest to come that was really representative of, like what we want the show to be and authorpreneurship. James Patterson. Well, in our network, we have somebody that has co-written with him 5 times. So like it's not like go to his agent and it's a personal thing, right? Like that becomes the power of the network. Now you can't abuse that and you can't exploit it, but like if you're really serious about this as a career, you need to build that. It's as important as your computer in some respects, right? Like if you want to get exposure to maybe somebody to co-write with or an agent, like build that network.
Yeah, we talked about this right before we started recording because we were talking about Patterson, and I was telling Joe that back in the Story Shop days, we did try to get a hold of Patterson, and it would have been much easier if we had a 2 degree or 1 degree of separation.
Yeah,
so that's perfectly stated.
So when someone goes to these events and they join the group and such, how do they build a connection with other authors, especially if they're on the lower tier, they're just starting out, they don't have much to contribute, they don't have much knowledge, they're just there to kind of get information. How do they build connections with people without coming off like opportunistic and like going right up to James Patterson or something?
Yeah, right.
James Patterson, I don't think we'll be milling the floor.
yeah, like he's a busy dude and he's 80 years old, so like he's got parameters in our agreement where it's like when he gets tired, he gets to get up and go back to his room. Right?
I need to build that into whatever things we do.
Well, when you get to be his level, you can do that. Yeah, so it's a great question, and so there's like again, part of this is something we're solving for, right? Like it's like okay, you have a community that needs what we just said. They have to have these components, but like that's not naturally. They're not like me. That's natural. Like I'm the mayor. Like I connect up with everybody, right? Because my brain works like I don't know if this is something that I need today. I need to connect you with somebody today that I know, or you're going to be a connection for somebody I meet 10 years from now. I've just learned that through my career that like that's where the magic happens. But so if that's not your thing, like well, that's again where we've designed this system. Where before the show we have the community and we have these regional groups. We've got one that's really strong on Discord, like we said, we're in these other places. But the idea is start building that relationship now, right? Start participating, and these particular things with the community are free. You don't have to even go to the show, but like start participating in this now, so that when you go to the show. You're already have a relationship. You're ready to meet these people, like, and they want to meet you. Like that's like it becomes exciting. Like, hey, we're gonna finally get to meet each other in Las Vegas this November. So there's that component we've got. This year we're doing some pretty interesting things that we didn't do last year around structured networking. So like on that Monday night, we're gonna have a big mixer for people to continue kind of the vendor day where they can hang out and keep talking. And we're going to do some things to help people to connect by genre, connect with their regions, so that if you aren't necessarily real comfortable with that, is just going there and sit at the table and listen, right? And eventually you'll know when it's time to step in. Now, here's something I've observed being around authors for the last 10 years. I think those that are introverted and kind of self-conscious, you have to understand you're in a room full of people that are introverted and self-conscious. So, like, everybody thinks they're the center of attention. So that means, like, give yourself some grace. And, when you do go to talk to somebody, don't be grabby, right? Like, it's real simple. Like, hey, I'm Joe and I write science fiction. What do you write? That's the start of any conversation between two authors. Personal suggestion, especially if you're coming to me, I don't want to hear about your story.
I hear that.
But I do want to hear about you, and I want to hear what you're trying to do with your career. But I don't want to hear about your unicorn herder and the lost love that was taken by the pirate. Like, they're not my thing. Like, but like,
one of those examples,
right?
I would add to this that, like, Dave, to your question, just be cool. Like, just be cool and don't be in a hurry. And I think what Joe said earlier is so essential, which is you never know when it's going to matter. A lot of things that are happening in my life right now, professionally and personally, are because of relationships I've had for a long time, or because someone I met 10 years ago. Like, there is a cumulative effect to living life. And I think that if you go to an event with the expectation that, oh, I have to make something happen and I have to make this connection, and whatever you go in with your preconceived ideas, well, you're almost setting yourself up for failure. When if you just go with the idea of, I'm open to whatever happens, and I'm a storyteller, and so the more stories I collect, the more people I know, the more life I live, the more rich I can make my narratives. That's the way you want to go to an event like this, and then you're going to naturally. That's how the universe works. Not to be too woo, I'm not a woo dude, but like, I've lived long enough to know that if you open yourself up to experiences, the right experiences do find you, and so do the right people.
I think it's kind of like. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add the idea. Like, one thing I've observed at these events is, like, you don't know who the winners and losers are going to be, right? I've watched people stride the stage with egos the size of Boeing 747s that are not around anymore. Mm-hmm. And at that same show, there's some guy that hasn't even finished his book yet that now he's the big deal. So when I'm talking to a lot of authors that are on the higher end, we're like, I don't know if I really need to go to a show. I got a mastermind, or I got this. It's like, here's the thing. The new hotness isn't going to come out at your mastermind. It's going to be somebody at our show who's on the up, is coming up, and you giving them a half hour of your time, sitting around a table in the mix and mingle midway, showing them some scar tissue and say, don't do this, do that. They'll remember that. And when you're on the skids, you can reach out to that person. Like, this is true. This is like brutally transactional, right? Like, but like, this person you've invested social capital in that next generation. They're going to remember. Right. And that's the part that I think that's too often gets forgotten in this industry is like, yeah, you're maybe on the top right now, but this is like professional tennis. Like, you don't hold that for very long.
Yeah, I liken it to, people that are, entering the dating world and such. There's people that are purely transactional. They'll go into the bar and they're going to close a deal, but they don't give a shit about the person they're talking to. They're not taking the time to actually get to, and then they go home alone and they're like, why am I alone? Because they weren't genuine. They weren't meeting people and trying to learn about
Dave,
them.
when you're kidnapping people for the basement, how do you start that conversation? Because is it really transparent?
I say, does this smell like chloroform?
There's no conversation. You just hear the brake screech on the van.
Like you don't know. Like I didn't kidnap you years ago. So authors at different stages of their career, can they all benefit from Author Nation and events like that?
Yeah, I think that our approach to this whole thing is that first off, you may not be ready for the show just because the smart thing to do with your money is to invest in your books, right? So I would rather see people hang out in our virtual community, do the digital ticket, really manage their money well, and invest that money that they were thinking of going to the show into their book covers, into their editing, get the product, get published, right? Because that is the right thing to do for their business. And that's what I always try and put forward first. From that being said, is like, if you have the money and you've never written a book and you come to our show, like, you are going to get millennia of data in a week. It's almost too much, right? But you're going to go up that learning curve so fast, and we've seen that. It's crazy. Like I had people like hugging me and weeping about like what happened at the show, and it wasn't anything I did other than kind of like getting all the pieces in motion. But it was having the emotional impact on their business and the impact on their business because they were seeing it right then and there. So I think that if you're serious about this, once you come and you see how many other people are serious about this and how they want to do this collectively, like it changes the game. Now, it's also a great filter because you can't come here 2 or 3 times and not be moving forward, and it starts to feel really bad. It's right, like you see other people and now their book's been published and now they're moving to another thing. And not that we want this to happen, but like when you start hanging around a community like this, it gives you so much probability of success because you're hanging out with the winners and you're hanging out with the people that are focused on this, that are talking about it, right? Like there's millions and millions of people that will publish a book this year. And we all know, because we've been doing this for so long, because we run into them through friends and family. It's like, yeah, you'll publish and that thing will be lucky if you get 5 reviews and $12. Right? But this place is where people are coming that are like, okay, not only do we want to understand what I need to do today, I want to know how to stay relevant in the future.
Yeah, perspective is super important in every industry, and in something like this, you're going to see some people who have, let's say you did the 7 books in 10 years or 10 books in 7 years, I think it was. You're going to see people who have published no books, 1 book, 2 books, but you're going to see people who have published a shit ton of books too.
Yeah, 150.
It doesn't matter what level you are, there is somebody else there to inspire you or to make you remember. And both of those things have a lot of value. I was talking to some dude on the last night, and I was like, how many books are in your series? And it was 58. He had 58 books in his series. And I was like, well, damn, clearly that's profitable. No one is getting to, and it was like, we actually talked about how profitable it was. And that's really inspiring, because for me, I could never spend 58 books in the same series. But that's the whole thing. You don't have to do it like that dude over there or that dude at yonder.
Yeah, and there's different models, right? And that's, I think, the other thing that's changed. If we kind of go back in time, like when you guys were running Smarter Artists and doing that stuff, is like you guys were at that like, hey, this is new, let's figure it out, right? Yeah. And everyone was in the same room trying to figure it out, right? And sticking forks in sockets and getting electrocuted and who knows, right? And then it went to this thing of like, oh, this is the way. There is only one way. It's the Amazon way. This is how we do it. You must do it this way. And that worked. And then it's like, we're back to where we were. What works? What doesn't work? Wow, this is changing fast. It worked 4 minutes ago. What now? Like,
yeah, it's this environment where everything works and nothing works, right?
Yeah.
And it's really about what works for you, what works for your creative culture and ambition and output and all of that. And there is no one size. But I love that was the pervasive feeling that I got at Author Nation, and I came back home with was, oh, like we've come full circle. Like it's frontier again, and it feels new and exciting, and like all the possibility is there, because the Amazon way did not resonate with me as a creator or as an entrepreneur. I thought it was sweaty ballsack all the way.
Well, and Dave, I'm gonna give you a really concrete example of like how we're embracing that. So I just sent out an email to our list of whatever 6,000 or close to 7,000 authors that about, hey, like I believe the changes that are going to happen in 2025 are going to be faster paced and more of them than there were the previous 5 years combined. Things that seemed like roadblocks before are just going to be like little speed bumps. So what are we going to do? Like, how do we handle this? So like, we have these things we're calling strategic initiatives, and we just rolled out our first one around Kickstarter. So we sent out this email saying, if you've ever thought about doing a Kickstarter, we have it's free. You don't have to come to the show. We're having our community collaborate on Kickstarters. We're going to run a structured program. There's no course we're selling. It's just like the community coming together. Now we're going to be rigid with this. Like, you need to be serious about running a Kickstarter, because we have Oriana Leckert who's going to coach you every other month for the next 6 months. And she's the one that runs publishing at Kickstarter. She's the Kickstarter lady, right? And we're focusing on how we can bring that to the event in a way where we can get people that are at the reader event to understand that there are people selling books on Kickstarter. And for some of these folks that are a little more sophisticated, maybe doing some in real life tier rewards at the event, like book signings and things like that. So the whole idea is building this building a system that you can try, right? Like, come in here and do that. And then we've created that community of like-minded people. We're holding each other accountable. We're focused on success, including the success of Kickstarter, right? And our show, like, this is a nice big loop. Like, let's be real about this. I want them to give us more sponsorship money. How do I do that? We get them more successful Kickstarters. How do we do that? We get authors having more successful Kickstarters, right? How big that flywheel gets, that's up to us now.
So what are some of the things that you think are changing this year that people do need to be aware of?
So one of our big things for the show is to focus on what we call praxis, or the whole idea of like taking theory and make it practical. And I believe there's going to be so much stuff and so many shiny objects. It's like, we need to get you focused on the core practical things that you do day in, day out, that compound. That's what drives this business, right? And so I think folks that are getting wrapped around the axle of AI, and whatever your feelings are from the creative perspective, you need to put that to the side and look at what it could do for your business on everything else that would win you back hours writing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be a big thing across all industries the next 18 to 24 months, of how people are just automating things and making things an even better customer experience with the robots. So like, if you're not trying to figure that out, like if you're like, I'm not going to touch AI, and then you don't get these things, like, that's going to hurt you, because you're still going to be like making your Instagram post by hand and answering customer service emails and wondering why you can't get books written. So I think that's like I know that's kind of tactical, but like, I think that's a big thing. I think, and we may have been talking about this, I can't remember if it was on the call or not, but like, how are you connecting with your audience? Like, you have your intellectual property. Without an audience that values that, there's no business, right? So how are you working on that? And I think with all the noise that's going on and people yelling, "Get off my lawn," that you have a really big opportunity if you have lighthearted, escapist work for them to dive into, right? So figure out how you're creating sanctuaries for your ideal readers to come into and stick around, because that's going to be money long term, because who knows what's going to be your opportunities with how your stories are told in the future. Like, it's not going to be how we do it today. Not that books are going away, but there will be new ways, right?
Yeah, it's a deeper instead of wider thing, because you used to, I mean, the whole AI conversation around, well, we can make more books faster, that's kind of irrelevant, because we've already hit a point where there's already so much competition. That's the big, I hear, argument around AI is, well, it's going to flood the market. dude, the market's already flooded. Like, it can't get more flooded.
Yeah.
How do you stand out? It's the same question.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for a while. It's like when I came in the industry in 2015, there was less than 4 million titles. There's 10 times that now.
Wow.
Okay, so that experiment has been run, and here's the answer to the experiment. The market is really efficient at sorting that out. Right, there's 3,000 or 4,000 books a day getting put up on Amazon, and the market sorts them out. And guess what? There's a lot of books that are well below 100,000 ranking in the system, which means they're not even selling a copy a day, right? So like that's the deal. So like if you think it's going to be crap books that's going to make you not visible, wah, wah. No. What's going to happen is those tools in the hands of a craftsman will be better craft.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think you're a good craftsman and believe that you can't improve your craft, that's a whole nother issue that's going to hamstring you. Right. Like Tiger Woods never stopped working on his putting game. Right. One stroke. Right. On the putting green could be the difference of being wearing that green jacket at the Masters or not. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part, again, was part of maybe this whole thing with like the Amazon KDP money hustle it was about production, right? Like find an underserved genre, get in there, pump some books into it, get an audience. That's not going to work, right? Now you need to like find an audience and engage that audience in your story. Like that's your marketing is in that story. And if you're not figuring out how to improve that, then like,
yeah, if I don't know, this may have been 10 years ago. I mean, time has really become kind of liquid. But a long time ago, we were talking about how it was when the rapid release vocabulary first started to come out, right? And it was like our whole motto was write, publish, repeat, which just means you do it again. Like it is a flywheel that you turn. But that turned into rapid release, which we never really wanted to play that game. It just seemed like it was too much. And we made the point back in the day that you should be asking yourself not how do I go faster, but how do I do a better job? How do I stand out, apart from my storytelling neighbors? How do I deliver a better product? How do I make it a more pleasurable experience, either by making the writing better or the packaging better or whatever it is? And that's where AI, I think, can elevate a lot of people's work. Is don't ask it to do the work you can already do. Ask it to do what's the things that I could do better, or what's the mundane shit that is not actually taking my creativity, but it's taking my time and my energy so that I have more time to be creative. And that's just optimization.
Well, I'll give you an example of this. So like we're at the show, we're doing a lot of work where every transcript that comes off of, we record the sessions, we strip out a transcript, we do the Q&A, we strip out the transcript, we're putting that in a big database so that we can have a chat GPT that we've trained query that. Okay. Now this came out of, we had 1,866 reviews of all the sessions. And we used AI to go through all that and kind of condense things down and help us to find things in the data. But then it became a really powerful marketing tool because I can go and say, hey, give me 3 quotes, real social proof from people about craft or advertising. And so now our marketing gets better with the data that we have in place, right? So that made us think, well, hell, we're going to have this vast data set of all these brains that we're talking about being an author that no one person could conceivably like get into. What if we create a tool that allows you to access that and to look for things based on where you're at? So like, hey, I want to write thrillers. I've never written a thriller before. Help me understand what's in here to help what I should do, right? Or if it's somebody that's more advanced, somebody, like us, where we've been around, like ask it questions like, hey, I'm trying to think of ways where I can use my craft as, more of a marketing tool or whatever it might be, and see what novel ideas come out of that. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to spit out the answer. It means it might spit out some stuff that makes you come up with the answer, right? And so I tell you that story because this gets back to what we're doing as a community at Author Nation. That's the kind of conversations we're having, right? Like, we want to make these tools available to you. Now, if you don't think that having tools like that aren't going to give you advantage in the marketplace, I can't help you. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, if you're just like, hey, I've got this book, it's tugging on my soul, I need to tell my story, and then I'm done. God bless. We're here to help you too. But most of us have this underlying interest to have people appreciate our work enough that we don't have to go get a day job. Right?
So,
go ahead.
To that point, how because you said before, like, you used to be able to go on, KDP, feed a genre, and boom, the readers would come. So how are people finding readers these days, especially people that are, like, newer to this, that don't already have an existing readership?
Yeah, I think this is, again, where we're trying to help people see the new way. And, a thing that I commonly hear is, especially people that have been successful, is like, well, my readers are all women and they're between the ages of 55 and 80 and they do this and that. Like, great, you've got this avatar. Now, is that all that you want? Well, no, I want all the readers. Okay, well, that means you have to think differently, because that means you might have to go to other platforms to find those readers, and you have to position and market your book in a different way. And the mental mindset of a lot of authors is like, they'll say, well, why would I go on Kickstarter? All my readers are in KU. It's like, yeah, all your existing readers are in KU. If you want these other readers, which are younger, have a higher average order value, you're going to have to do things differently. You're going to have to give them different product. You're going to have to treat them differently. You're going to have to talk to them in their language. And you'll find that it sucks because you're starting over. It doesn't feel as easy as what you have already. But the people that start to think about this that way and be like, you know what? I'm really cool with just these kind of readers. I want to have direct readers. I want to maybe have some people on Kickstarter. They're worth more money. I don't need as many of them. They appreciate my work more. This is kind of where Johnny's going with his business. Then you build the business to do that, right? But you then also have to think about, like, how you're positioning and when you're releasing products where and all that stuff. Well, we're going to help you figure that out. That being said, if you're like, hey, I'm a contemporary romance writer and I want to make money quick, it's like, well, the obvious choice would go into KU. Like, that's where the money's at, and start there and then move elsewhere. But for other folks, maybe their choice would be to go wide and take a longer, slower approach, knowing that there's going to be the right payoff.
Yeah, I think it's okay to think in terms of 2 steps forward and 1 step back, as long as you're always turning the flywheel. So for us, a few years back, when we had gone away for a little while and we wanted to kind of rebuild, so we rebuilt our KU thing, and all of a sudden we realized, oh, the more this KU thing works, the more we realize it's not really where we want to be. It's a kind of a race to the bottom. It's hard. It was hard. The way we were doing it then is different than the way we're doing it now, and it wasn't really fitting with our story culture at the time. And so we said we need to be wide, and we knew there was an expense for that going wide was going to hurt our income temporarily as we shifted things around. And that's okay. Like, we planned for it, we went through it, and we got to the other side of it. But I think that you can't be really excited about what you have now and want to grow and get all the readers and not be willing to make a few sacrifices along the way, because you have to experiment, and experimentation, there's usually cost of tuition for that.
Yeah, and you think about, like, a lot of people, and this is just how it is in this industry, it's like, oh, direct sales is the new hot thing, or Kickstarter is the new hot thing, right? So like I'm going to do a Kickstarter. I decided I'm going to do a Kickstarter, right? And I touching on this because this is the kind of stuff we're going to talk about in our sessions. It's like, if your objectives when you're thinking about your Kickstarter is like, I want to do a Kickstarter and I want to resell, my 5-year-old book in a new special edition, and all I care is that my Kickstarter makes as much money as Dave's Kickstarter did, right? Like, there's like some weird ego, but like we know a lot of people that talk that way, right?
Yeah.
Versus, I think there's an audience for my genre and my IP on there. And I'm going to take the time to develop that. And I'm thinking about how I'm developing the ideal product and experience for a Kickstarter person, and how I'm building that list over list over list. So like maybe the first thing I roll out isn't something that would be a quick, easy win with like a redoed version of my first book that I know my super fans are going to buy. It's some short stories that's helping me build my Kickstarter list so that I can roll that out so it's even bigger, right? So you're thinking about this overall bigger strategy of success on that platform that lines up with that platform and that audience. Again, wow, that's a lot of work. I don't want to do that. Okay.
Yeah, but it's also a place where you can partner. So I don't think we've actually officially announced this anywhere. So this is the first time. But Dave and I are doing, I won't say what it's for, but Dave and I are actually doing a Kickstarter that will launch in 11 days from today. And we've done a couple of successful Kickstarters, but they're a lot. And I have a lot going on, and Dave has a lot going on. And I love the idea of experimenting with Kickstarter. I don't care if it's more than Johnny's or anybody else.
Yeah.
It's the idea of like getting it out into the world because it is a new marketplace. But we're also partnering with somebody to like help us with that. And actually, she'll be on a podcast. I think it's our next one. Actually, I think we're recording these out of order, and you'll have already heard the Kickstarter story by the time that this airs. Hilariously, we had a little calendar shuffle. So actually, we have announced it. This is repeated information. But Danny is the person who's helping it with us, and Danny is somebody who's done her own Kickstarter, and she loves Kickstarters, right? She loves it. So if you work with somebody who they're not swimming upstream, this is the language they speak. They know all the vocabulary. They're going to be able to help you. And maybe you can't afford to hire this person as a consultant. If you have a good project and they believe in it, maybe cut them in on a percentage. There are ways to figure this kind of stuff out. But ignoring it because this is what works now is really it's the best way to just fly right off the cliff.
And I think that's the strongest case for communities like Author Nation, is that you're around other people and you see what they're doing, you see where they're succeeding, you see where they're failing, you can partner up with people.
You see all the 4-minute miles, right? All the shit that you didn't think you could do. Well, that dude did it. She did it. Dude, that bitch did it 3 times, right? Like all of a sudden you know that you can do it too, and that makes all the difference in something that's both creative and business stuff. Like you have to know that it's practical, and you have to feel it on a gut level to really put both feet in.
Now, one thing that always turned me off to communities, like I felt we got lucky with ours. Yeah, well, being around people in general, but I feel like we got lucky with ours because everybody at least seemed to want everyone else to succeed. But I've seen other communities where they were anonymously like sniping at each other. They were reporting them on Amazon and just crazy shit. How do you avoid stuff like that in your community?
I think that stuff is, especially as the community gets bigger, there's going to be that kind of stuff. Now, so we've got some things that we've put in place. So like we have a professional conduct committee that is kind of keeping eyes on things that happen at the show, and we'll make decisions around conduct. And we have a code of conduct that I think generally I've said, so I used to be in the oil and gas industry. Okay, we had a site blow up. Like I got a call from a guy in Wyoming, like, Garner Lake's on fire. I'll let you know when I get there. We'd have baby mamas show up to the guys at work and start fist fights. Like, it was just like, you'd hope your employees could all pass their drug test, because we just were under, like, there was all these horrible, horrible things we were dealing with. And there's days I wish I was back there, because it was so much easier than dealing with the self-created drama
Is
that is in
ego
this.
is the biggest enemy that you find?
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot of comparison that goes on. When we dealt with it with the show, there was a lot of people that were like, hey, what you're doing and how you're doing it is very different than what was there before. And, we don't like it. We don't like you. We're like, and it's like, I get it. What I know today is like, I'm building the most badass jungle gym for authors on the planet. And I've got super cool people like you and others that are hanging out here. We're all rode up on our Schwinn Stingrays and we're going to play. Like, this is going to be a blast. And if you want to not play, okay, go make your own jungle gym. I don't care. I'm having too much fun. And, we even get it with something like Patterson. Like, well, why are you bringing these celebrities in? This isn't an indie conference. It's like, you guys, first off, you don't understand where we're going with this thing. Mm-hmm. We're not just like trying to make an indie conference that we can sell a ticket for. We're trying to develop a vehicle that takes power back from all of these people and gives it to the creator. And why wouldn't we want somebody with his power playing ball with us?
Right.
Like,
there's a certain segment of creators that they want us to play small. This is part of it. When we did our first Kickstarter, I said something live on the podcast that pissed a lot of people off, and it was that like I don't want to just fund. I want to fund through the roof, and like they're like, well, you're building this off the back of your audience, and this is greedy. And I'm like, I don't even understand. You guys are creatives. And I basically said, I'm going to go out on the stage and play a performance, because this was Fiction Unboxed. We were promising to write a book live, which may not be as novel now, but 10 years ago, writing a book live in 30 days in front of an audience was a novel thing to do. It was really ballsy. And I said, look, I'm basically saying I'm going to go out with my cello and play like solo in front of an audience. I want every seat filled. I want as many people there as possible now that I've committed to doing this. And I just didn't understand this contingent of people who had a problem with us like saying that, or me saying it, because they wouldn't say something like that.
Yeah. I think it is there's this mindset around, like, when they see that obstacle of our ticket price or you doing something, and it taps into their scarcity and their feeling that they're never going to get what they feel they deserve. And again, I'm not a woo person, but I know that, like, focusing those thoughts gets you focused on those thoughts. That's where you go. It's like, I'm more of like, hey, dude, they keep printing more money every day. Like, we just need to figure out how much of it we all four of us want right now. Right? Like, why are we trying to slice up a piece of pie? Why don't we make a bigger pie together? Right? Like,
I agree. I feel there's some people that they want to be right more than they want to have the right things happen. They don't want to learn. They don't. They're looking for things that already prove what they believe to be the case. Like if they think the thing is a ripoff or whatever, they're going to look for things that's a ripoff.
Yeah.
But and I say this as a skeptic, I always seek out facts and stuff to support my beliefs. And I found, though, that approaching things with a more open mind, not trying to prove a negative before I'm even involved in anything, has led to better places, because I could see the possibilities, I could see the opportunities in a way that the old me did not see. So,
no, that makes a lot of sense, and because of that attitude change, now possibilities open up for you, right?
Yeah. Obvious. I mean, I'd still be, sitting in my dungeon all alone if I never trust anybody or do anything or put myself out there, then my success would look very different. So, and I wouldn't be able to tell the stories I'm telling now. So I think it all works out if you're willing to put the ego aside, if you're willing to not begin with no, as Sean said, I always do. Not begin with no. Look for the opportunity. That's one of the biggest lessons Sean has taught me. So,
yeah, and I think one of the reasons why Sean and Johnny we hit it off is because there's this kindred spirit around like creation, right? I'm not necessarily focused on like pumping out stories, but like I see this whole thing as a really interesting creative endeavor for me. Like I work in a different media. That's all.
Business is your art. I totally get that.
Yeah. And so the setting these systems up and these initiatives, it's like our conversations are just very different, right? Like when we meet with our sponsors, we're like, help us understand your business. Like what does success look like for you, right? Because if I understand that, like that's in the stew now, and like it's going to help with the flavor, because if I can help that person to justify investment in our show, then that's money that goes to the audience, right? But like I've got to deliver to them, and the initial thing is like, wow, this thing, like this is so expensive. What are you trying to do? It's like, well, here's the big vision. Like, let me explain it to you. Like we're trying to make a author event where you can come and get your well filled. It's associated with a reader event where we can have readers build a community, and together we have this overlap in the Venn diagram, which results in two things, like you being able to find more audience, right? Which gets back to a previous question you had, is like that was a thing of like, well, what if we just did all the work and we brought the readers here? Like we filled the barrels up with fish and handed you a shotgun. Would you like that? But then there's an economic thing. Like if you're coming to the show and you're, selling enough books at the reader event that it covers your whole time there, then guess what? More people are going to come to the show. That's one of those flywheels. Like it's all been thought through. Like it isn't just like, hey, that would be a good idea. Let's make more work for everybody. Like no, it's a system that's designed to give, like, I know you guys, Andre Chaperone and like way before, right? Like the whole idea of systems thinking and what's the emergent property that we're looking for here, right? We're designing for the emergent property. Well,
it's been great having you. I know we have a meeting soon. Everybody that wants to find you, authornation.live, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and your next one is November 3rd through the 7th, 2025, in Las Vegas, Nevada, with James Patterson.
Are you going to Author Nation?
I don't know, man. I hate leaving my house.
All right, so Joel, my goal is to get Dave to Author Nation. I mean,
all right.
All places too, Vegas. Like Dave in Vegas, I think is
God
show. So I kind of love it. I put the odds at 5% right now, but I'm gonna work on it.
Well, let me know what we can do to change those odds. Yeah.
If you can have me taken like in a train car where I never have to drive or anything or fly, then we're good. All right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate all that you're doing, and it's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Awesome. It's been great to meet you.
Thanks, Joe. And until next
time. All right. See you later.
The shadows of the Sunshine State, where redacted is his home, lives a man named David Wright, who pens the great unknown. Diet Coke runs through his veins, a decoy wallet keeps him rich. Paranoia fuels his pen and creativity's his niche. Write, publish, repeat.